Spoiler alert, people don't always have nice things to say about lawyers.
Even Shakespeare once wrote, "First thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers."
I like that.
Which actually was more about lawyers being what stands between the government and the fanatical mob, but we don't really need to get into all that right now.
Right, but what do we do when someone goes online and writes things that are not just unflattering, but untrue?
In our last episode, we discussed the importance of online reviews and how to handle the bad ones.
Now, we know not everyone is going to go as far as filing suit against a fictional cow.
But when does a client review qualify as defamation? And even if it is defamatory, the real question may be, should you actually do anything about it?
In this episode, we're discussing defamation and everything from anti-SLAPP lawsuits to liability for online platforms.
Thank you for joining us on Fine Laws Don't Judge Me, the podcast about the real life of lawyering. Today, we're talking about whether bad reviews are worth filing suit. I'm Laura, and here with me today is Andy.
Hey.
Joe.
Hi, Laura.
And Allie.
Hello.
Reviews are important for any business, and the legal industry is no different. We talked a lot about that in our previous episode. And while maintaining control over your firm's narrative is really tempting, when it comes to defending your firm's reputation, how far is too far? So today we're going to talk about whether filing suit over bad reviews is worthwhile and a few things to keep in mind. So one of the first things I think we need to talk about is First Amendment issues. If someone is voicing their opinion online, even if it's unflattering, it's usually going to be protected speech.
Yeah, and that's fantastic.
I knew you would like that. That's probably your favorite thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think online reviews and Twitter, to a certain extent, as much of a cesspool has become, it is the great equalizer.
That is true.
Someone is not totally in charge of their own narrative if they are providing bad service at a restaurant or an attorney whose website says, you know, we answer phone calls 24/7 and we always call you back within a day, and they actually never do that. The review platform is a great way, I think, to let people know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I don't think we have any debate over whether people have the right to voice their opinion. And moreover, we also know that everyone has the right to speech that is anonymous, and we see that a lot in online reviews. And so one of the biggest issues for attorneys, I think, is are you going to take the time to hunt down the people who are posting reviews without their name attached? Do you want to spend that time?
Cowabunga guy,
Exactly.
6743.
Sorry, Cowabunga guy.
So sorry.
743.
I hope the answer to that is no. It's definitely not worth hunting down Cowabunga guy. Like we talked about last episode, if you just make a thoughtful response, if you answer the client's concern, you know, that's not to say that you can't point out that you never represented somebody whose name was Cowabunga. You can absolutely say that this is not a real person, or I never represented this person. But you know, don't waste your life on these kinds of issues either.
Yeah, definitely. I think, at least in thinking about this and researching it a little bit, one of the things that came up most often was that it's really only worth it to go down this road of suing when the person leaving the review was never a client at all. And so there have been cases. I came across a case where a business tried to subpoena Yelp for the identity of anonymous reviewers, and the courts actually sided with the law firm because they had evidence that the person leaving the review had never been their client at all.
It was just like a vendetta. Like they had some accident.
Or they were just, being a troll.
Right, yeah.
Was this a canceling? Did the firm do something to just get a flood of reviews, or was this only one person?
Oh, it wasn't a law firm. It was a carpet cleaning business.
Oh, sweet.
But, the precedent is there, yeah. What it came down to was that the Court of Appeals in Virginia said that although people have the right to post anonymously and to post these reviews, that if the business could show that they had a legitimate good faith basis to believe that these were not actual customers, then Yelp was going to have to turn over the information about their identity.
And then in the end, would they have to get rid of the Yelp would have to delete the bad posts?
I think that's what they were going for, yes.
Okay.
Which is, I think, with most platforms that you can leave attorney reviews, that is an option. Like if you feel like somebody's leaving a review and you're working through that service and it's not legit, I think not all, but I know some have a policy to challenge those
Yeah, I think most would have some kind of takedown policy where you can,
which is obviously a first step. Before filing
you want to. I would say start with that before going into actually filing
burn it
suit.
down.
Yeah, so if you immediately go for filing suit, then you're definitely going to run into anti-SLAPP issues, which is another big topic in all this.
Or even if it is somebody who was your client and they leave something and you think it's false or it's causing harm to your reputation or your business. Whew, I mean, filing suit, that's a whole other...
That's sort of the nuclear option.
It is. Yeah. It is the nuclear option. I think you really have to weigh that pretty carefully before... I mean, it's like suing for fees. Like, they're pretty likely to come back with something. And I don't know any of us practice with 100% certainty that we did everything exactly right. So, I think that's definitely the nuclear option.
I'm glad that we make it really difficult to chill speech online.
Yeah.
I was in preparing for this, I was reading a little bit about libel tourism in the UK, how people will file defamation suits there because the author has the burden of proof. Unlike the plaintiff. It's used a lot in tabloids. Celebrities and politicians will sue tabloids with glee over there just all the time because then the onus is on the author to prove what they wrote versus here where you, Allie, the lawyer, have to say, this is harming my rep.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if a U.S. defendant doesn't show, they'll usually just get hit with a default judgment over there. And a lot of times that used to be enforced here until I read that the law changed. In 2010, U.S. courts are barred from enforcing British court libel rulings.
Interesting.
Now, of course, we do have forum shopping here, too, with SLAPP lawsuits. For example, I think, California that has one of the tougher laws in the U.S., and so I think a lot of California residents file elsewhere. I've seen a couple recently that were filed in Virginia with basically no connection to the state outside of they published something online and people in Virginia could read it. And that's enough to establish a connection and file a lawsuit for defamation. Virginia courts, at least, have said that they have personal jurisdiction in those kinds of situations.
Get your act together, Virginia.
They actually are. I think they're introducing legislation there now in response
Virginia?
to a couple. Yeah, okay. Virginia.
Oh,
yeah. Well, I suppose we should just quickly go over SLAPP lawsuits just to kind of make sure that all of our listeners are on the same page. SLAPP stands for Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. It's used generally to silence people who are saying unflattering things about a business or person.
It's litigation to bully.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the lawsuits involve usually something like defamation or interference of contracts, those kinds of things, where they're saying that this is untrue and it's harming me and you're interfering with my ability to make a living, when, of course, all they did was just say something that might have been true, might have been an opinion, but nonetheless, you get to tie them up in court. Maybe your local newspaper can't afford those fees, and so they just decide not to start writing about you anymore.
Right. Well, yeah, right. The point isn't the end result of this litigation. The point is to essentially sort of terrorize people into silence or not voicing their opinion.
And those statutes generally, correct me if I'm wrong, those statutes generally allow the defendant to get rid of the case rather quickly instead of getting tied up and being silenced. Am I right on that?
You are, yeah. That's typically the first
does.
thing. I mean, they of course vary from state to state, but then some states do allow the defendant to recover attorney's fees. Not all of them do, but again, like
that's a huge part of it. So yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
Are there any lawyers whose niche is SLAPP plaintiff lawyers?
Yeah, there's a word for them.
Slap hole?
I mean, I don't know. I doubt that they advertise themselves as such, but yeah, I mean, there's certainly, obviously, attorneys out there, I'm sure, who have bulldog reputations. Do you have information about that, Joe?
Well, that would be a little bit dangerous, I think.
We don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there are. But yeah, I don't think it's... SLAPP lawsuits are something of an epidemic, but I don't think it's along the lines of some attorneys who focus on like filing ADA claims on behalf of clients that may or may not exist.
Right.
Hey, you're going to get bad reviews if you do that.
The ones who are just generally operating badly despite what type of lawsuit it is,
But there are certainly people who have a tendency to file SLAPP lawsuits. It does seem to be like there are a few people out there who really specialize in this sort of lawsuit.
Like public figures or business owners or certain organizations?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm thinking of a certain representative from California has a tendency to do this.
Oh, he's a treat. He's a real peach.
But this is an apolitical show.
Of course.
Yes.
That gets into one of the other issues of whether it's worth it to file suit, is that probably drew a lot more attention to the whole situation than was even necessary. I mean, I think of they call it the Streisand effect. In 2003, Barbara Streisand went to great lengths, I'm talking like a $50 million lawsuit, to have a photo of her home removed from the internet. But the thing was that the photo was only downloaded twice, and both times it was by her own attorneys. So what ended up happening was that filing the lawsuit and going through all this drew so much more attention to this photo that she didn't want people seeing, when realistically she probably could have just let it go and no one would have ever seen it.
So I think the moral of the story is that Barbara Streisand has everything to teach us about the life and the law.
Yes. What I'm saying is, in a lot of situations, it's probably better to just let it go. Or, like we talked about in our previous episode, find a way to respond to this review and move on, instead of sinking time and energy and probably money as well into a lawsuit about an online review.
Your energy is better spent in other ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Someone was going to find that house. People are going to find it. Sorry, Barbara.
Babs.
So the bottom line is, in most cases, you're probably better off responding to bad reviews with a succinct, constructive reply rather than filing suit. But if you're dealing with trolls, people who you've never worked with, who are posting nonsense, there is precedent that can help you out. Up next, we're going to throw it over to Joe, who's created a segment he's calling SLAPP-Happy.
So I thought it'd be fun to play a game.
Oh,
I love games.
Okay.
I think people are going to love to listen to us playing.
Well, the listeners can play at home.
Ooh.
Ooh.
So here's what I'm thinking. I will give you a situation that may or may not be an actual slap, and you can tell me whether it's true or false.
Okay.
Ooh, I like this.
So you're
Okay.
making up your own SLAPP lawsuits. Some of them.
Potentially, or
Yes.
some are real, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the game.
Yeah.
So it's true or false slap.
Right.
Right. Okay, sorry. I
Yes.
don't want to minimize it. It's a fun game, no doubt.
I
Folks,
spent a lot of
please
time
play
on.
along.
Please play along.
I spent a lot of time on this, Allie.
I'm sorry, Joe. No, I'm excited to play. Let's go. Let's do it.
We're all proud of you, Joe, and we see you. Let's play.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank
Joe.
you. So, a Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur financed various lawsuits against an online media company in retribution for an article that called the tech entrepreneur gay. There may be a sex tape involved in this one.
Oh, that's got to be real.
This is definitely real. I know this
Yeah,
one.
true.
Well, it is true. It also would have been weird if I had made up one that involved a sex tape, I
Yeah.
think.
That is true. That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
We
a
gotta
little
read. Yeah, I gotta read more into this.
Yeah. So it is true. I'm referring to Peter Thiel, who financed a lawsuit by Hulk Hogan against Gawker, who is now defunct. Yeah. So Peter Thiel was angry at Gawker for publishing that information that he was gay. He filed his own suit, but then he also financed Hulk Hogan's suit when Gawker published Hulk Hogan's sex tape. In our second example, a New York attorney sued a blogger who wrote, quite truthfully, that she had been sued for malpractice. That's all he wrote. It was a true claim, but the attorney decided to sue anyway. Is that true or false?
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
I've talked to a lot of lawyers. I see this happening.
I'm going to say false.
The
Is
what?
it true?
It's true, yeah.
Oh, you just looked really proud of it. So it's like, did you think really hard about writing that? Or is it actually, now I'm just trying to game the game.
Yeah. Yep. Allie really wants to win, which I appreciate.
Obviously, my strategy's not working.
No, it is true. This happened back in 2008. I'm not going to name the attorney or the blogger, but yeah, it was just a neutral statement that she had been sued for malpractice, and she decided to file suit.
My cynicism paid off there.
Yeah, it's a good example of what not to do. Yeah, really draws more. Yeah, I mean, you draw more attention to yourself. You do not appear better off because of it.
Do we know what the malpractice was?
No, I don't. Not off the top of my head.
And also, it's not that uncommon.
It's super common to be sued.
Yeah, to have an ethical complaint, end up in dismissal, but malpractice claim. I mean,
I mean, every doctor has been sued for malpractice, and
not that
quite
I
a few
want to
attorneys.
go for that, but it happens, and it's not. Yeah.
To be clear, not every doctor has been sued for malpractice.
Oh, God.
To be clear.
Now we're going to get slapped with a defamation
I
lawsuit.
hope not.
All right, so after question 2, let's take a look at our scores. Andy, you're going strong with 2 correct.
I think I'm 2 for 2 as well.
Laura, you're 2 for 2. And Allie is 1 for 2, but don't give up hope yet, Allie.
It's okay.
Our listeners are pulling for you.
I doubt it.
They're not.
No, that's
All right, example 3 is this talk show host was sued for criticizing an energy magnate. The case did not include a sex tape, but it did involve foul-mouthed squirrels.
Yeah, this is real. I know exactly who this is.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I don't know this one.
I do.
Okay, so we've got
So
what?
I'll say false.
Okay.
I mean, Laura gave it away that it's probably true by saying that she knows who it is. But if she had not have said that, I'm going to be honest here because I'm not the lawyer, so I'm going to be honest.
Oh.
Wow! Burn!
And I would have said false.
All right, so we've got a false and 2 trues. It is true.
Welcome to the bottom of the game.
Yeah. So this, of course, is John Oliver of Last Week Tonight, who criticized a coal magnate, basically for his business practices. That magnate took offense and sued John Oliver, alleging defamation. He recently did a segment about SLAPP lawsuits, John Oliver did, and I think he claimed that HBO spent something like $200,000 defending him.
Did he layeth the slappeth down on this guy?
Yeah, they won. Yeah.
It's worth a watch.
Yeah, and the segment is available on YouTube, and we can actually link to it in our show notes if any of our listeners are interested. It's worth a watch.
And John Oliver, if you're out there, you are welcome on our show.
I will say, when I've seen Last Week Tonight, they have quoted from some of our work on FineLaw.com.
All right.
I have seen that before.
My
So
God,
yes,
we're famous.
Hey, now.
we are happy to host him. So our 4th example is about a lawyer who sued his celebrity former client, who he defended against drug possession charges for, among other things, saying that he was a truly terrible human
Yes.
and a disgrace of a lawyer.
This is true.
We haven't had one be false
This
yet.
is
so
the celebrity has said that the lawyer is a true disgrace of a human being.
Yep.
I'm going to say true because I want it to be true.
Oh,
so mean to us all the time.
seriously.
I'm going to say false just because Joe hasn't made one up yet.
It is
Yeah.
true. Yeah. No, I'm trying to come up with outlandish things, and everything that I've come up with has already actually been done.
You got to
false
tell
or
me
you
who
say
this
I
is.
said false.
Okay, so we're all even now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Tied up.
I've got a chance.
So yeah, this is actually a very recent case that's just happened. But Jose Baez, who is famous for defending Casey Anthony in her murder charges, he actually represented Rose McGowan in drug possession charges. She ultimately pled no contest, and after he was done with the case, he stopped representing her. He then agreed to defend Harvey Weinstein against sexual assault charges. Now, Rose McGowan was also one of the first people to
Come out against
come
him,
out,
yeah.
And so there was definitely some ethical considerations.
Now, I am not a lawyer, yet again, but would any of you consider that? Would that be considered a conflict of?
It shouldn't.
interest?
I think that's legit not, because I mean, unless something in her case with the drug possession had to do with the Weinstein case, which I don't see. I mean, who knows? I don't
But
have
if
all
he
the
just
facts,
asked
but-
her questions about Weinstein and then went on to
Right, if he used it against her in
Yeah.
other litigation.
Okay.
So that's exactly the dispute,
Yeah.
right? Because if it had nothing to do, if the two things had nothing to do with each other, it's just fine.
Although arguably, if is that still active, where she's still suing Weinstein? Because then it would potentially, if it's something negative about her, I guess I could see.
Yeah. So Baez says that he cleared it with an ethics attorney.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we get his point of view on it.
Some of this isn't,
Yeah,
bright line.
But what Rose McGowan is saying is that Weinstein bought off Baez, and she actually claims that Weinstein planted the drugs on her.
Oh, that's right. Yep, that's right.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so she's
There's
claiming
more to her
Yeah,
claim.
so she's claiming it's all a big conspiracy.
Not just a basic conflict of
Yeah.
interest. Yeah.
Right, and so not just a conflict of interest. And
Right.
so then the issue is that did Weinstein buy off this attorney?
Jose Baez, you are welcome to come on to Don't Judge Me and tell your side of the story.
That would be fascinating,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah,
So-
he is no longer representing Weinstein either. He was actually agreed to be co-counsel at the same time as that Harvard law professor, who is now no longer a Harvard law professor. So yeah, it's tough to represent Weinstein.
Well, I can imagine.
Yeah,
We don't have time to get into all of that.
Yeah, so
that's true.
I love that this is a game, and we've just discussed lots of legal issues as
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we've got three
top
lawyers in the room.
I know. It's
that's-
just
Well, that was
bound
the
to
purpose
happen.
of the game.
that's true.
So was it a three-way tie?
I think it was.
so,
Yeah.
We're all winners.
Yay.
Yay.
Thanks, Joe. That was a lot of fun and very informative. And that wraps it up for this episode on defamation. Thanks for listening to Fine Law's Don't Judge Me. Check the show notes for links to relevant Fine Law articles on lp.finelaw.com. For more multimedia content, check out the Fine Law for Legal Professionals YouTube channel. Please support the show by rating and reviewing us. We welcome comments, questions, and opinions, and we promise we won't sue you if you're mean. Contact us at podcasts@thomsonreuters.com.